Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone was putting on a show? Like you're surrounded not by people, but by performers, each one wearing a carefully crafted mask, smiling, nodding, saying all the right things, but something just feels off. I know that feeling because I've been there many times. The truth is, most people are acting not because they're malicious, but because they're protecting something, a fear, a weakness, a truth they don't want seen. But here's the twist. Once you learn to read beneath the surface, once you understand the signals that leak out when someone's trying their hardest to hide jewel, never look at people the same way again. You'll see the cracks in the mask. You'll hear the story in their silence. And you'll feel the truth they're not saying. I remember this meeting. Everyone in the room was on board, full of smiles and fake enthusiasm. But I knew better. Why? It wasn't in the words. It was in their feet, their eyes, the subtle hesitations between sentences. We think people lie with their mouths, but the body always tells the truth. If you're ready to uncover what most people are trying to conceal, sometimes even from themselves, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Technique number 1. The Tell Me More technique. Let me introduce you to a technique so simple, so disarming, it almost feels like magic. No special skills, no intense psychology degree. Secret key. Tell me more. Sounds underwhelming, right? But don't let the simplicity fool you. This is a psychological power move disguised as polite curiosity. And the best part, people don't even realize you're using it. I first discovered it during an argument with a friend. Of all things, we were debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. I was loaded with comebacks, ready to win the debate like it was a courtroom showdown. But something in me paused. Instead of firing back, I just smiled and said, "Tell me more." What happened next? They kept talking, but not just about pizza. Suddenly, I was hearing about family dinners as a kid, nostalgic memories, and even a story about how a childhood allergy made them hate pineapple forever. It wasn't about pizza anymore. It was about emotions, memories, identity, all from 3 little words. Here's why this works. When people feel truly listened to, their defenses drop. They stop trying to convince you and start revealing things they hadn't even planned to say. You create a space where they feel safe, where they feel like they don't need to perform, argue, or defend. And in that space, they reveal their fears, their hopes, their insecurities, their motivations. They think they're having a casual chat. But what they're really doing is letting you into the blueprint of their inner world. I've used this technique with friends, in business negotiations, even with people who are clearly trying to hide something. And it works every time. One time, during a tense business meeting, I was tempted to push my agenda hard, but I stayed calm. I just leaned in and kept repeating, "Tell me more." By the end of the meeting, the other person had spilled everything, their pressure points, their desperation to close a deal, even the limits of what they could offer. It was like they handed me the playbook to their entire strategy, and all I did was listen. Now, don't get it twisted. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about digging for gossip or trying to control someone. It's about connection. In a world full of noise where everyone's eager to speak, but few are willing to listen, this technique is a way of cutting through the static. It forces you to pause, to stop thinking about what you're going to say next, to get out of your own head, and to genuinely, deeply see another person. Tell me more is empathy without attachment, understanding without absorbing, connecting without losing your own center. It's not just a way to read people. It's a way to help them reveal who they are without even realizing they're doing it. So next time you're in a conversation, whether it's a negotiation, a difficult discussion, or just a regular chat, don't rush to speak. Pause, breathe, look them in the eye, and say, "Tell me more." Then just listen. You'll be surprised how far people will go, how much they'll open up, how much easier it becomes to truly understand them without needing to argue, correct, or control. And once you learn to do that, you'll start seeing everything they're trying to hide, without them ever knowing. Picking up from what we just learned, the Tell Me More technique isn't just about listening. It's about building real, meaningful connections. When you give someone the space to be heard, you don't just understand them better, you often learn something deeper about yourself, too. Because reading people is never just about them. It's also a mirror reflecting who you are in the process. And that brings us to a second, incredibly revealing method, one that doesn't rely on words at all. Technique number 2. Watch how they treat people in a lesser position. If you truly want to understand someone's character, don't just look at how they treat you. Look at how they treat people they believe are beneath them. This might sound simple, maybe even obvious, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful indicators of who someone really is beneath the surface. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. People can be charming, eloquent, and endlessly polite when they want something, or when they know they're being watched. But take away the spotlight, take away the social expectations, you'll start to see their real face. It might show up in how they talk to a waiter, or how they treat a janitor, or the tone they use with a junior colleague who has no real authority. And what you'll find is often eye-opening. I learned this lesson the hard way. I used to work with someone who, on the surface, seemed like the nicest person alive, always cracking jokes, smiling in meetings, respectful to everyone in positions of power. But then, one day, we went out to lunch, and the moment we sat down, I saw the mask fall. This person, so kind and charismatic, just an hour before suddenly turned cold, impatient, and entitled, snapping at the server, barking orders like they were royalty, talking down to the waiter like they were invisible. It was jarring, like watching someone flip a switch, and it wasn't a slip-up. It wasn't a bad day. It was a glimpse of who they really were when they thought no one that mattered was watching. The truth is, people often reveal themselves in moments of perceived power imbalance, when they think the other person can't fight back, can't complain, can't hurt their reputation. If someone is rude to the waiter, dismissive to the intern, or talks down to a cashier, they're showing you more than a personality. Quirk, They're showing you their moral baseline, because the person who's kind to you but cruel to others, they're not truly kind. They're calculated. They're performing for your benefit. But when there's no benefit, when kindness won't earn them anything, they drop the act. And in that moment, what you're seeing isn't a bad attitude. It's their default setting. Stoicism teaches us to observe not with emotion, not with judgment, but with clarity. To watch how people act, not just when things are good, but especially when there's nothing to gain. It's easy to be polite in a meeting when your boss is present. It's easy to laugh at someone's joke when you need a favor. But what about when the cameras are off? When no one's keeping score? That's when the real test begins. And I've started using this as a kind of quiet filter in my own life. Friendships, in business partnerships, even in dating. I've watched how people behave when the stakes are low, when they interact with a cleaner, a barista, or someone struggling on the street. And those moments have told me everything I needed to know. Because someone who says thank you to a bus drive, who holds the door open for a stranger, who treats everyone with dignity, regardless of title or uniform. That's the kind of person who doesn't need to prove their worth by stepping on someone else. But it goes even deeper than that. How someone treats others, especially those with less power, is a reflection of how they truly see themselves. People who are secure don't need to belittle. They don't need to dominate a conversation or make someone else feel small just to feel tall. But those who are cruel, those who act superior, they're often battling something within: insecurity, ego, a need to control. And they project that pain outward by putting others down. So next time you meet someone new, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do, especially when they think it doesn't matter. Because in those quiet, seemingly insignificant interactions, you might just find the loudest truth of all. We ended the last section by talking about how someone treats those who can't offer them anything, and how that's often the clearest glimpse into their true character. Because kindness without benefit, that's where the mask slips and the heart is exposed. But what shapes that heart in the first place? That brings us to the third and equally powerful insight. Technique number 3. Their past is the key to their present. If you really want to understand someone, not just on the surface, but on a soul-deep level, you have to look at where they came from. Not just their current job, their clothes, or how they carry themselves now, but their story, their history, the things they've survived, endured, and internalized. People often say, the past is behind us, but in reality, it's not. The past doesn't just sit quietly in the rearview mirror, follows us. It shapes us. It becomes the lens through which we see the world, whether we're aware of it or not. Their past is influencing everything: how they think, how they react, how they trust or don't, and even how they treat you right now, in this exact moment. Now, this might sound controversial because it suggests that people don't simply move on. But let's be honest, do we ever really leave the past behind? In many ways, we carry it like an invisible backpack. Sometimes it's light, just a few memories. Other times, it's heavy with regret, trauma, or pain. But make no mistake, it's always there. I had a friend once who seemed constantly on edge, always defensive, quick to snap, reluctant to open up in any kind of close relationship. At first, I chalked it up to personality. Maybe they were just high-strung or naturally suspicious. But over time, as our friendship deepened, the truth came out. They'd been betrayed by people they trusted. They grew up in a financially unstable home, and they were raised in an environment where they constantly had to prove their worth just to be seen. Suddenly, their behavior made perfect sense. That short temper, it wasn't random. It was armor, a defense mechanism forged in fire. They weren't just reacting to the nows, they were reacting to ghosts from their then. And sometimes, scars. Those scars show up in how we love, how we argue, how we trust, how we handle success, even more, how we handle failure. A person who grew up feeling emotionally neglected may now crave constant reassurance in every relationship. Someone who was cheated by a business partner may become cold and skeptical of any future collaboration. And someone who was told again and again that they'd never be enough might become obsessed with validation, performance, or control. But here's where it gets important. Understanding this doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior. It means we see it clearly. Stoicism teaches us not to judge what we observe, but to understand it, to recognize things as they are, not as we wish them to be. When we understand someone's past, we gain context. And that context helps us navigate the present more wisely. I've seen this play out in romantic relationships countless times. Have you ever dated someone who seemed perfect at first? Thoughtful, caring, present. But as time went on, patterns began to emerge. Maybe they became clingy. Maybe they pulled away without warning. Maybe they were overly jealous or afraid of commitment altogether. 9 times out of 10, if you dig deep enough, there's a reason. A history of broken trust. A betrayal they haven't healed from. An experience that planted the seed of fear. And now that fear has taken root in how they relate to you. When you understand that, it doesn't mean you have to stay. It doesn't mean you tolerate toxicity. But it does mean you're no longer confused. You see the why behind the what. And here's the hardest truth of all. Most people are stuck in cycles, living out emotional patterns formed long ago, unaware that they're just repeating the past. On a loop, the coworker who constantly seeks praise. Chances are, they were never made to feel enough growing up. The friend who always sabotages their own happiness. They may be reacting to a deep-rooted fear of rejection planted by a parent, an ex, or a painful moment they've never fully confronted. We think people are responding to the present, but often they're responding to echoes, their habits, their fears, their attachments. It's all a mirror reflecting the unresolved chapters of their story. And here's the takeaway. If you want to truly read someone, not just what they say, but what drives them, you have to be willing to look at where they've been, not to judge, not to fix, but to understand, because beneath every reaction is a reason, and behind every wall is a wound. In the last part, we explored how someone's present behavior is often a reaction to the echoes of their past and how recognizing. That helps us understand them more clearly. But there's a deeper truth here, one that goes beyond just observation, because sometimes understanding someone's past doesn't just help you navigate the relationship. It can also help them finally break the cycles they've been trapped in for years. You see, once you begin to recognize the patterns someone is stuck in, there's something powerful you can do. You can gently, without judgment, shine a light on what they keep repeating. Maybe it's how they always sabotage good opportunities, or how they push people away when things start to get real, or how they shrink themselves to avoid conflict. If you point it out with care, not accusation, you might help them connect the dots for the first time. Loop they've been living in, that moment of insight. It can be life-changing, because the truth is, most people aren't choosing their patterns. They're reacting to unresolved pain. They're replaying a script written long ago. And when someone finally sees that script clearly, they can start to rewrite it. Stoicism encourages self-awareness, growth, and, above all, the practice of seeing things as they are, not as we assume them to be. So when you understand someone's story, when you look beyond the moment and into the timeline, you gain not only empathy, but influence, not to manipulate, but to guide. To hold up a mirror when they can't see themselves clearly. It's easy to judge someone for being distant, defensive, or cold. But when you understand that those behaviors were born from a need to survive, to protect, to avoid repeating pain, you approach them with more clarity and more compassion, while also protecting yourself from being consumed by their unresolved battles. In short, the past is always present. To truly understand someone, you can't just look at the chapter they're writing now. You have to read the whole book. Now, let's shift gears, because while reading someone's emotional history helps you understand their why, reading their tone helps you catch what they're not saying out loud. Technique. #4. Sudden changes in tone signal lies or hesitation. One of the biggest giveaways that someone is lying or hiding something is a sudden change in their tone of voice. Most people don't even realize it, but our voices betray us. Long before the words give anything away, the tone sends a signal that something's off. When someone's speaking from a place of confidence or honesty, their tone tends to be smooth, steady, and natural. The words flow, their pacing feels grounded. It all fits. But the moment there's discomfort, guilt, or uncertainty, the voice shifts. It might be subtle, or it might be glaringly obvious. Either way, it's like their subconscious is waving a red flag, hoping someone notices. I remember working with a colleague who had the gift of charm. They could talk their way through anything: meetings, presentations, negotiations. They always had the right words. Until one day, we were discussing a project deadline, and out of nowhere, their voice changed. It dropped in pitch. Their usual smooth cadence became choppy. They started hesitating, pausing between words, like they were searching for a safe answer. It was like a record that suddenly started skipping. That shift was my cue. Something wasn't right. And sure enough, it turned out they hadn't even started the project. They were just trying to cover it up. They didn't lie with their words, but their voice gave them away. Here's why this happens. When we lie or feel anxious about what we're saying, our mind and body go to war. The brain tries to keep the lie alive, but the body knows the truth. And one of the first places that inner conflict shows up is in the voice. It might crack unexpectedly, rise in pitch, drop into a monotone, or stall with odd pauses that don't quite fit the rhythm of natural speech. It's as if the words and the emotions behind them are out of sync, like watching a movie where the dialogue doesn't match the actor's lips. That dissonance, that's your clue. Think back to the last time you caught someone in a lie. Did their voice suddenly get quieter? Or maybe it sped up like they were rushing to get it over with. Perhaps it sounded forced, overly cheerful, like they were trying too hard to sound normal. These shifts are often subconscious, but they're real. And they signal discomfort, whether from dishonesty, insecurity, or emotional tension. It's not just about catching someone in a lie. It's about tuning into the vibe behind the voice. Because hesitation, uncertainty, or overcompensation all show up there first. I once had a friend who was always excited about weekend plans. Dinners, trips, get-togethers, you name it, they were in. But every time it came closer to the actual day, something would shift. Their tone would flatten. They'd say things like, "Yeah, looking forward to it," but with no real energy behind it. Eventually, I realized the pattern. They didn't actually want to go. They just didn't know how to say no without feeling guilty. And again, it wasn't their words that gave it away. It was the tone. The way their voice lost life while their mouth still said yes. Tone speaks before language. It whispers truths people aren't ready to say. If you learn to hear it, you'll be reading people in a way they never expected. In the last section, we explored how sudden shifts in tone can reveal what someone's really feeling, even when their words say something else. And once you start noticing these vocal changes, you'll realize how often people's voices betray what they're truly thinking or avoiding. I had a friend who always seemed excited about the plans we made. She'd text with exclamation points, send emojis, and talk enthusiastically about how fun everything sounded. But the moment I suggested something she wasn't entirely into, maybe a restaurant she didn't like, or an activity she wasn't in the mood for, her tone would shift instantly. Her voice would flatten. The lightness disappeared. It was like someone had flipped a switch, turning off the enthusiasm mid-sentence. Even if she said she was fine with it, her voice said otherwise. That subtle change, it became my cue that she wasn't fully on board. This phenomenon doesn't just show up in friendships. It plays out in business deals, in family conversations, even during seemingly casual chats with strangers. Experienced it to when someone you're talking to suddenly changes, going from upbeat and warm to distant, defensive, or overly formal. They may still be talking. They may still be smiling, but the vibe, it's changed. And if you're paying attention, you can feel it before you can even explain it. Here's the key. In those moments, stop focusing solely on what they're saying. Start listening to how they're saying it. That sudden drop in energy, the change in pitch, a strange hesitation where there wasn't one before. These are subconscious cues, and they're often your clearest window into the truth that someone's not saying aloud. Sometimes they're lying. Other times they're simply withholding. And occasionally, they're not even aware of it themselves. And here's where it gets deeper from a Stoic perspective. People don't always lie to deceive you. Often, they lie to themselves. They say they're fine, but they're not. They say it's no big deal, but it is. They pretend they're confident while their voice trembles with doubt. And when they speak that lie out loud, their tone, the tremble, the forced calm, the odd pacing gives them away. Not because they want to be caught, but because some part of them is uncomfortable with the story they're trying to sell, even to themselves. Stoicism teaches us to observe without judgment, to watch, to listen, to notice the dissonance between what someone says and what they signal without even realizing it. Your job isn't to accuse or confront, it's to understand. And here's something worth reflecting on. We all do this. We've all had moments when we said something we didn't quite believe and noticed our own voice falter. Maybe your tone softened when you said, "I'm over it," but deep down you weren't. Or you agreed to something, even as your voice got quieter, like your body was resisting even while your words complied. Your voice becomes the mirror of your inner truth. That's why Stoicism emphasizes alignment, that your thoughts, words, and actions should be in harmony. Because when they're not, the tension will always find a way to leak out. And often, it leaks through your tone, your posture, your silence. So the next time you hear someone's tone shift, whether it's a pause, a pitch change, or a flat response, don't ignore it. Ask yourself, what are they not saying? What are they holding back? What are they uncomfortable admitting even to themselves? It might not be a deliberate lie, but it's likely not the whole truth either. And the voice always tells on them. Technique number 5. The most honest moments are when they think no one's watching. If you really want to see someone's true character, their core values, their unfiltered self-tone, watch them when the spotlight's on. Watch them when they think no one's paying attention. That's when the mask drops. The performance ends. And their authentic self, the part they usually keep tucked away, uncomfortable truth. Most of us like to believe we're the same person in public as we are in private. Honest and self-aware. But the reality, people often behave very differently when they believe there are no consequences. When no one's watching. When there's no social pressure to impress or conform. I once worked with a manager who was the picture of professionalism, polite, measured, friendly. Always said the right things, especially when upper management was around. But the moment the higher-ups left the room, she transformed, she snapped. At team members, she made passive-aggressive comments. She dismissed people's input like it was a waste of time. The calm, composed version of her. That was just a mask. Behind closed doors, she was condescending, reactive, and quick to belittle. And watching that shift, watching someone go from poised to petty the second they thought no one important was watching, taught me something crucial. The person someone is when they think no one is looking is who they really are. We ended the last section with a powerful reminder. Who someone becomes when they think no one's watching, that is their truest self. Not the version polished for the public, but the one that emerges in silence, in small moments, in the shadows. When people are in the spotlight, they're hyper-aware of how they're being perceived. They filter their actions, their words, even their body language, trying to strike the perfect balance between likable and respectable. They want to impress. They want to avoid conflict. They want approval. But the second they believe no one important is watching, when the social pressure fades and the applause dies down, the filters drop, and it's in those moments, the ones that seem too small to matter, that people show you who they really are. You see it in how they treat someone who has nothing to offer. You see it in how they react when they believe no one's paying attention. And you see it in how they behave when they think no one will hold them accountable. It's subtle, it's quick, but it's telling, because it's in these fleeting interactions what many would dismiss as insignificant, where the authentic self quietly steps forward. This principle applies to every area of life, in business, in friendships, in relationships, even in passing encounters with strangers. Let's take romantic relationships, for example. In the beginning, both people usually put their best foot forward. They're polite, generous, patient. They laugh at each other's jokes, even the bad ones. They listen with interest. They dress nicely. They try. But if you want to know who they really are, don't just observe them during the grand gestures. Watch them during the quiet moments when they're not trying to impress. What's their tone like when they're hungry and tired? How do they treat the waitress when she messes up the order? Do they still say thank you? Do they still show patience when plans fall through? Or does their kindness vanish the moment no one's clapping? I've seen this dynamic play out in social settings too. There's always that friend who becomes the center of attention at parties, cracking jokes, telling stories, lighting up the room with energy and charm. But then the spotlight shifts. The crowd thins. The laughter fades, and suddenly they become distant, aloof, dismissive. It's not that they're tired, it's that the audience is going and with it. The effort, in those moments, their true character surfaces. Not in how they command the room, but in how they act when no one's watching to reward them for it. Here's where the Stoic perspective becomes essential. As a Stoic, you're trained to observe life objectively, to look beneath the surface without judgment, to see what is, not what people want you to see. People often reveal who they are when they think they're off stage. And those are the moments you should pay attention to the most. Because Stoicism teaches that virtue, true moral character, is not measured by how we act when the world is watching. It's measured by how we act when it isn't. I once worked with a colleague who, in public, was warm and supportive. In meetings, he always had something positive to say. He'd celebrate teammates' wins. He'd offer help and encouragement. But the moment we were alone, the warmth disappeared. His tone turned cold. He was short, uninterested, and only engaged when the task directly benefited him. It was like watching someone switch masks depending on the size of the audience. And that's when it hit me. His kindness wasn't kindness. It was calculation. Because the most honest moments in a person's life are not when they're under the spotlight, but when they're outside of it. When someone believes they're unobserved, unjudged, and free of consequences, that is when their real values, their true instincts, and their actual priorities emerge. If someone can only behave well when someone important is watching, that's not character. That's performance. If someone shows respect only when it might earn them something in return, that's not virtue. That's strategy. And this is where Stoicism drops its deepest message. True character is who you are, in the shadows, not in the spotlight. It's not about the version of you that's curated for compliments. It's about the version of you that shows up when no one's around to validate it. A Stoic doesn't adjust their integrity based on who's in the room. Their values don't bend with the audience. Their kindness, patience, and discipline come from within, not from the promise of external reward. So ask yourself, and ask this of others, would they still be good if no one were watching? Because in the end, it's not applause that defines a person. It's alignment between what they believe, what they value, and how they quietly live when no one else is keeping score. In the last section, we explored the idea that a person's true nature emerges not when they're being watched, but in their most unguarded, unseen moments. And when you observe those moments without judgment, you not only see them more clearly, you are also reminded of the importance of living your own life with integrity, even when no one's around to see it. So the next time you want to truly understand someone, don't fixate on their grand gestures or their polished public persona. Look instead at the quiet, in-between moments when the spotlight is off, when the audience is gone. That's when you'll witness who they really are. And in those moments, that's where the truth lives. Now, let's look at one more powerful lens for reading people in. This one is often hiding in plain sight. Technique number 6. Emotional reactions. Reveal priorities. Say if you want to know what truly matters to someone, what they value deep down, even if they don't talk about it. Watch how they react emotionally, because emotions don't lie, even when words do. Even when people try to appear calm, controlled, or indifferent, strong emotional reactions are like an unfiltered window into the soul. Whether it's anger, excitement, anxiety, or even joy, those spikes in emotion are signals. They expose priorities, they reveal vulnerabilities, and they shine a light on what a person holds closest to their heart. Let me share a quick story. I once worked with a colleague who was the definition of composure. Calm in meetings, rational in debates. He never raised his voice, so one day, something shifted. We were in a routine team meeting, and someone casually suggested a minor change to one of his projects. Suddenly, he exploded. It wasn't a rude suggestion. It wasn't even a major revision, but the reaction. It was huge, sharp, defensive, out of character. At first, I was surprised, but then I realized this wasn't about the change itself. This was about what the project meant to him. He had poured countless hours into it. It wasn't just a task, it was a piece of him. His pride, his identity, his creation. That emotional outburst revealed more than any status report ever could. Without saying it directly, his emotions told the truth. This matters to me more than you know. And that's the thing, people won't always tell you what matters to them with words, but their emotions. They'll tell you everything. Boss, who bristles when you question his decision. It's not just about control, it's because being seen as right is tied to his self-worth. The friend who gets unusually defensive over something small. It's probably touching an old wound or tapping into a deep insecurity they've never fully shared. And that person who lights up when you praise their work, it's not just gratitude. It's because recognition is a core need for them if they pretend it's not. The strongest emotional reactions, whether positive or negative, reveal what lies beneath the surface. They might try to act cool, detached, or indifferent most of the time. But when something they care about is challenged, or acknowledged, or even threatened, you'll see it. You'll feel it. Anger, frustration, elation, tension, excitement. All of it points to something important. And this isn't limited to negative reactions, like conflict or defensiveness. Sometimes, the clearest signs come from the things that make someone glow. Think about the way someone talks about their passion project, their side hustle, or their favorite hobby. They become more animated. Their eyes light up. Their posture shifts forward. Their voice rises just slightly in pitch. That joy, that spark. It's telling you, this matters to me. In romantic relationships, this principle is especially revealing. Maybe your partner seems oddly upset when plans fall through even though they say it's fine. What's underneath that? It might mean that quality time is their love language. That time with you is what they value most. Or maybe they become anxious when you don't text back quickly. It's not just neediness. It might be that emotional connection, shaped by past experiences of abandonment or distance. In the previous section, we explored how emotional reactions, whether frustration, excitement, or defensiveness, windows into a person's core priorities. Emotions are never random. They're always anchored to something deeper. A value, a fear, or a part of someone's identity they're trying to protect. So, the next time someone gets unusually animated when talking about an upcoming trip or shared event, it's not just excitement. It's a signal, a sign that creating memories or building shared experiences is deeply important to them. It tells you more than words ever could, because emotions are always connected to values. And if you learn to listen to emotional cues, not just the words, not just the body language, but the emotional spikes, you'll get a clear, unspoken map of what truly matters to someone. No need for them to spell it out. No need to pry. Their emotions are doing the talking. Take this scenario. Let's say you casually mention to a friend or colleague, "Hey, you've been running a bit late lately." You expect a shrug, maybe a quick apology, but instead they get defensive, flustered, even angry. They lash out as if you questioned their entire character. What's really happening there? It's not about being late. It's about what punctuality represents to them. To that person, being reliable might be a part of their self-image. They've built their identity around being dependable, on time, trustworthy. So even a small jab feels like a threat to something sacred, that emotional outburst. It's their unconscious way of protecting a core value, the value of being seen as reliable. And that's where Stoicism offers such powerful clarity. It reminds us to observe behavior objectively, especially when emotions flare. Because when emotions spike, it's a sign something valuable is at stake. This applies not just to the people around you but to you, too. Once you start noticing emotional reactions in others, you'll begin to pay attention to your own. And here's the deeper Stoic lesson. Your emotions also reveal your priorities. When you feel yourself getting angry, hurt, offended, or deeply moved, pause. Ask yourself, why is this hitting me so hard? Is this about something I truly care about? Or is this just my ego reacting to discomfort? Are you upset because someone questioned your honesty? Or are you more upset that your image in their eyes took a hit? Is the situation really about fairness? Or is your pride just bruised? Stoicism teaches that by understanding our emotions, we can begin to control them, not suppress or ignore, but recognize and respond wisely, because not all emotional reactions are rooted in principle. Some are tied to pride, others to insecurity, and some are simply habits we've never examined. The ability to read people isn't some rare, magical gift. It's a skill, a practice. It's about learning to pay close attention to the subtle signals, body language, tone, emotional shifts, behavioral patterns. All of these are like clues, breadcrumbs, that lead to the truth beneath the performance. And this is where Stoicism gives you the ultimate edge, not by telling you what to think, but by training you how to observe without distortion or drama. Because when you learn to see past the surface, when you start noticing what's not being said, you gain a quiet kind of clarity in every social interaction. But here's the key. This isn't about power. It's not about manipulating people or using insight to get an advantage. It's about understanding. And more importantly, it's about becoming. The more you understand others, the more you'll begin to understand yourself. What makes you react emotionally? What do you prioritize deep down? Are you living in alignment with your values, or just reacting to life as it comes? Because reading people is not just about decoding the world around you. It's about refining the world within. Final reflections. Outro. So, let's bring it full circle. Reading people truly. Understanding them isn't about catching lies or winning conversations. It's about slowing down enough to observe what most people miss. It's about seeing past the masks, past the polish, and into what really drives someone. It's about asking better questions. What does this reaction say about what they care about? What does their silence reveal? What am I learning, not just about them, but about myself? And once you begin to see the world through that lens, everything changes. You stop guessing, you stop reacting, and you start understanding with clarity, with calm, and with compassion. Thank you for spending this time here, reflecting on what it really means to read others and yourself with wisdom. If this message resonated with you. If you want more videos like this where philosophy meets practical insight, please consider subscribing to Stoic Havenway. Here, we're not chasing noise. We're building a quiet space for clarity, strength, and growth. Until next time, live with intention, observe with honesty, and above all, never stop learning how to see beyond the surface.